Hi everyone, I'm Sarah. I'm a freelance photographer and communication designer based in Poland, with the main focus on editorial design. And actually on this slide you can see a part of my book, which I did for my bachelor's degree, which I'm going to talk about in a bit. But let me start with a story. So in this picture you can see me taking a probably very picturesque photo of some plates and knives and forks in a room which for many, or actually all of you, it seemed just like a regular kitchen with a nice view to the garden. But for me, this place brings many memories, as this is the kitchen where I would spend some long hours preparing lunch, drinking wine, and talking to the person you can see standing with her back turned. So this is Monique. She's a friend of mine, or most precisely, a friend of my father's, whom he met over than 30 years ago when he started living in Paris. And Monique has always been present in my life, as when I was little, I used to live in Paris, and she would sometimes take care of me. And when I didn't live in Paris, every time I came for a visit, which was every half a year, I would also come visit her and eat lunch with her. And I have to say that I've always really loved talking to her, as she was this creative, wise, funny and a bit crazy French woman. But I can clearly remember one summer when I came to visit her, and I could spot a small difference in her behavior, as it became a bit chaotic and she herself became disorganized. And she would, for example, look for the chicken in a dishwasher, or she would forget if she had taken the plates to the dining room. And I didn't really feel like it was such a big case at the time, but then when I visited her exactly half a year later during my winter holidays, I could spot a vast difference in her behavior. And I would get frustrated and angry when she would ask me the same question over and over again, and when she, for example, insisted on me being my father's girlfriend, and some other slightly ridiculous things she was saying. And I stopped for a moment and thought, why am I feeling this kind of emotion? And I've realized that it was somehow because of the fear of not being familiar with this type of the behavior. And by behavior, I mean Alzheimer's disease. So at the time, I didn't know much about this, probably just some basic facts and figures. But what really surprised me during my research was that there are over than 44 million people worldwide living with it. And this is the only fatal disease which cannot be cured. So while we can't do anything about it, I found that being prepared for it, either for yourself or for your loved ones, could be somehow crucial. So I thought, okay, while I can't do much for the suffering, why not use my skills to help sort of healthy people get prepared for it? And my biggest goal was to raise a general awareness of this issue. So this is why I've created a book. It's in Polish, but the title says Dissolving Memory, about memory, forgetting, and Alzheimer's disease. This is how it all started. I spent some long weeks sitting next to this desk, going through the piles of books. And then I started writing my own book. My biggest goal was to take all the information I gathered and put them into an accessible form so that everyone could read the book. or almost everyone, because you could get frustrated in the middle. On this slide, you can see one of the last pages of the book, and you can see that the text is barely visible. You can still decipher it if you try very hard, but I gave it to a few people, and they said that, yeah, that it was just a frustrating experience for them. Here's a close-up of one of the last pages of the book. And here is also a page from the same book, but from the beginning. So you can see some effects like repeating signs or the distortion of the text, but you can read the text normally without any difficulties. So my biggest goal was to show the progression of the disease and the loss of the memory in a metaphorical way using a visual language. I also wanted to implement Monique, which I've talked about a second ago, because she was my main source of inspiration, and I also wanted to implement some emotions into the book, which would transfer the emotions of a person suffering from Alzheimer's disease, which are, for example, anger, confusion, and disturbance. I wanted to put these emotions into the book so that the reader could experience them. And I just used a home scanner, moved the photo back and forth. And these are some of the collage which I managed to create. And this was actually the hardest part for me in this project, because the photos were taken by my father. And on the photos, I could see Monique being a very cheerful and careless person. Most of them were taken at her cottage house, where she was just drinking wine on almost every photo. And then I compared her from the pictures to the state she was in at the moment when I was doing my project. And for me, it was really, yeah, it was a heartbreaking experience. You can see the collage being used inside of the book. So my biggest aim was to showcase the Alzheimer's disease in a way that could be understandable for a reader. And it was a very long, interesting, but also emotional journey for me. But I really do hope that it would help to raise a general awareness of this issue. Thank you.